I've been reading about the situation in Nagorno-Karabakh, also known as Artsakh amongst the Armenians. The Armenians called Nagorno-Karabakh Artsakh. And it is truly, truly, I mean, it's just so depressing and tragic what has been happening to the Armenians of Nagorno-Karabakh under the tyranny, the abuse. I mean, this is abuse, what's been going on. The abuse by the Azeri government. The Azeris can turn off the gas. They can turn off the electricity anytime they want. They can block food from entering Nagorno-Karabakh. They can block medicine. And they can cut off the gas and the electricity anytime they want. And they've done this numerous times. Last year, they cut off Nagorno-Karabakh from natural gas. I mean, it's just awful. It's abuse. And it's a sign of something even more horrific to come. I remember last year reading about how in March of 2022, the Azeri military were driving around Nagorno-Karabakh. They were driving, within Nagorno-Karabakh, driving around the Armenian areas, screaming through loudspeakers, if you are an Armenian, leave. If you don't leave, then we're going to force you out. We're going to force you out. So this explains why the Azeris have been doing this abuse, blocking the Armenians from food and medicine and electricity and gas, because they want to force the Armenians out, and it is a policy of ethnic cleansing. They want to purge Nagorno-Karabakh of all of the Armenians because the Azeris are racist and the Azeris hate the Armenians because the Armenians are Christians. And there is also this vicious nationalism that the Azeris have. And last year, Azerbaijan invaded Armenia because they took Nagorno-Karabakh back in 2020, and it was okay. They took Nagorno-Karabakh because supposedly it rightfully belongs to the Azeris, and the Azeris are simply taking what belongs to them. But they don't stop there. They don't stop there because it's not about reclaiming lost territory. It is about conquering a Christian country and exterminating the people there. That is the ultimate agenda. Because if it was all just about Nagorno-Karabakh, then why in the hell did the Azeri military enter mainland Armenia? They entered mainland Armenia. They invaded Armenia. They killed over 100 Armenian soldiers. And this was the most disturbing thing that I heard of and saw on the internet in regards to this event. They took some Armenian female soldier, cut off her breast, and just dismembered her body, and they filmed her corpse, and they mocked the corpse, and they scoffed at the woman, and they laughed about it, and it was a big joke to them. Why? Because these people are sick. They're demonic. And it reminds me of what happened back in the 19th century when the Ottoman Turks were butchering Bulgarians and Serbs. And I was reading something last night about how the Ottomans would massacre Bulgarians and how they would rape Bulgarian women. And I read about this sadistic policy that they had. Multiple Ottoman troops would rape one woman, and the last one to finish had to kill her. Or killed her. I mean, just like that. I mean, these people are demonic and sick, and they're sadists. And after Azerbaijan invaded Armenia, what did NATO do? Really, what did NATO do? Nancy Pelosi came out and said, "Oh, bad Azerbaijan, you're being very naughty, Azerbaijan." And we keep hearing about how, Russia invaded a sovereign country. Well, what the hell did Azerbaijan do? But we can't say anything about that. Why? Because Azerbaijan is a very important strategic ally, and, well, it's an extension of Turkey, so we have to respect them and honor them. We can't really bash them. But we can bash Russia. That's fair game. Russians are fair game. Russia is fair game. Why? Because Russia is a threat to NATO. It's all political. And then you read about what's been happening in the Baltics. I read about what's been going on in Latvia, how they did mass arrests of Russians for celebrating the victory of the Soviet Union over the Third Reich. Some old man on a wheelchair was arrested. I mean, it's crazy. It is absolutely crazy. But so much evil has been done. So much evil. And it's like, I've been doing this work for so many years. I've been doing this work for over 10 years. I started doing this type of work when I was in high school. And then I seriously got into it back in, I want to say 2012. So I've been doing this for over a decade. And I was thinking, every day I'm reading about tragedy. Every single day of my life, I have been reading about tragedies. Tragedies in Sudan, tragedies in South Sudan, tragedies in the Central African Republic, tragedies in the Balkans, tragedies in the Caucasus, tragedies in Armenia, tragedies in Ukraine, tragedies in Syria, tragedies in Lebanon, tragedies in Iraq, tragedies in Mexico. I mean, I did a whole documentary about the horrors that have been taking place in Mexico for years. I did a little documentary about a Serbian sniper who fought in Bosnia, and he's been very active in the war in Ukraine. And it's just tragedy. Killing and massacring, and it's like it never ends. It's just constant tragedy. And people will say, Ted, why do you say life is depressing? Life is a blessing. Yeah, you're right. Life is a blessing. But with people, you can't have nice things. Most people are decent, don't get me wrong. But there's a minority of people that make life miserable for everyone else. And it's that minority it's because of that minority that we can't have nice things. I mean, we can't have nice things. Like I was looking at, lately I've been looking at videos on the horrific spike in shoplifting going on in the United States. I mean, we're talking about robbing stores, people robbing stores every single day, going into these big stores or small stores, small businesses, and robbing them all the time, destroying products in the stores. And this type of thing has been going on throughout the country, but mainly, it's all happening in the big cities of the United States. It's all in the metropolitan centers, and it's so depressing to see this. And I follow a page on Twitter that just it's constantly posting videos about stuff like this. And I told myself today, I think I should just stop watching these videos because it's so depressing. It's so depressing to see how human beings are so callous and so evil. Like, how can you go and destroy someone's business? And what's sickening is you have these gangs in the United States. These gangs in the United States that cause destruction, destroy people's livelihoods, destroy people's businesses, destroy people's employment. And then some criminal gets killed by a cop, and that's the tragedy. They want to make that a tragedy, but who gives a damn about the poor business owners? Who cares? They're just evil, capitalist, corporatist, whatever. Who cares about those people? Russia invades Ukraine, but let's ignore the abuses that were done to the peoples of Donbass. That's what they want us to do. Look how evil Russia is. But look at Ukraine. Look at the fact that they've been honoring Nazis. Look at the fact that they have been changing street names to the names of famous Ukrainian Nazi figures. Look how they praise Nazi historical figures. Look how they praise mass murderers. Look how they praise people who took part in the extermination of other people, specifically the Jews and the Poles. Oh, ignore all of that. Who cares? You look at Turkey. I mean, Turkey denies the Armenian genocide. Turkey supports a genocide of Armenians in Nagorno-Karabakh. But Turkey is a very important strategic ally, so we have to still praise them. It's like, this is the tragedy. This is the pain that human beings endure. But who cares about all that stuff? Who cares? And this is what I hate about the world that we live in. This is what I hate about it. It's like, It's like I remember when I was in school, and this was kind of like my first. This was like my first introduction to this nonsense, right? This sickness. I remember some kid stole my backpack, and I confronted the kid, and he grabbed my shirt, and I punched him in the face, and I got suspended for a week. Like, what the hell? Like, the injustice was done to me. I was minding my own business. This person attacked me. It doesn't matter. You attacked the person. And it's like justice is, and this happened in California, of course. Justice is spat upon. And that's when I began to learn, like, justice is spat upon. Justice is ignored. It's ignored. And you see injustice done by Azerbaijan, but Azerbaijan is an important ally, so who cares? Who cares about that? Ukrainian military commits war crimes. Who cares about that? Let's not focus too much on that. Let's focus on how bad Putin is. And I've been looking at all these videos on shoplifting, but that's not the tragedy. The tragedy is one thing that a cop did this one time. And cops kill criminals every single day, and they'll find one story of a criminal getting his comeuppings, and they'll say that's a tragedy. Or I saw this video, I couldn't believe it. Like, this guy in somewhere in America, I don't know. He steals a car. The cops are trying to find the car. They find the car with the criminal sleeping in the car that he stole. Get this. Cops try to arrest him. He manages to hold on to the steering wheel and put his foot on the accelerator and drive off. There's a police officer in the back seat. He takes his gun out. This maniac is behind the wheel, driving like a maniac. This police officer takes his gun. He takes his gun, points it at the guy, and he says, if you don't stop this car, I'm going to kill you. The guy doesn't stop. Cop kills him.
Remember, for us, don't grab my face. Oh.
Police! Don't move! Don't move! Don't move! Don't move! Don't move! Don't move! Stop! Get up! Get out! Stop! Stop, man! Just let me out! Let me out! Stop! Stop, bro! Shoot! Stop!
The family is now doing a civil rights violation complaint. Basically, they're trying to get a lawsuit. They're trying to get money off of this guy. And they're like, what happened to my son is an abuse. It's a crime. It's a tragedy. Oh, so what did you expect the police officer to do? Slap a seatbelt on and say, okay, let's enjoy the ride. Let me know when you want to stop, sir. Like, justice is spat upon. That's the world we live in. We live in a world where justice is spat upon. Decades ago, there was this, oh my God. Let me first do an introduction to this one, because this one's hard for me to say. Gun control. This is another thing that I want to talk about. Gun control. See, for years I've been kind of split on gun control. It's like, well, not everyone, but you got people armed with AR-15s. And when somebody wants to commit a mass shooting, it's easier for them to do a mass shooting because they have that kind of weapon. You have these liberals who are like, well, we got to get rid of all the guns. We should just have people have no guns, et cetera, et cetera. And I was thinking about this last night because I was watching these videos on shoplifting. And I'm thinking, my God, if we had imagine if America was, imagine if this is not going to happen. I don't think this is ever going to happen. But imagine if they managed to get everyone's weapons, right? To confiscate everyone's weapons. Just imagine this. What would happen? There would be the gangs of the inner cities, the gangs of America would be having a heyday. They would be having a field day because they could just break into some poor family's home and rob them and kill them. Some woman home by herself because her husband's at work, her kids are at school, she'll be completely defenseless. Gangs would go into the house, gang rape her, rob stuff, and kill her. And stuff like this has happened. We would literally become South Africa. That's what we would become. We would become South Africa. Decades ago, there was this horrific story and I did a video about this recently, but decades ago, I think it was in 1985 or something like that, there was this horrific story that took place here. America's full of horror stories. It's like, I hear these people, I watched this horror movie, I got so scared. Listen, horror movies can be spooky, don't get me wrong, but nothing compares to the reality of the horror stories that you hear in real life. And let's be real. And the fact that it's real is what makes it more, is what actually makes it scary. Some poor woman was in the home by herself. Her kids were gone. Her husband, I believe, was at work. A criminal breaks into the home, rapes her, steals the television set, and kills her. Takes the television sets and drives off. And you know what the most heartbreaking part of that story is? The kids come home to see their mother dead. That's the most heartbreaking part of the story. And the crime was so heinous, was so egregious, that the state said, kill this guy. He needs a death penalty. And he kept running those appeals. He kept going to the appellate court. Appeal. Right? So he was getting very close to being executed. And of course, his lawyers said, my clients want to do an appeal. They want to do an appeal. My client wants to do an appeal. They said, okay, send your appeal. So the lawyers got writing out the appeal, and they said, the computer's not working. What's going on? The judge said, time's running out. We're about to close. If you don't get your appeal here on time, your client's dead. But just give us some time. Nope. You got 10 minutes. And they killed his ass. And justice was served. Justice was served. And you know what was so disturbing? That the murderers, the rapist and murderer's family started complaining, talking as if this bastard was some victim. They're like, and the sister was talking, well, my brother's mentally ill. Oh, he was mentally ill. He wasn't mentally ill enough. He knew that he could set an appeal. He wasn't mentally ill enough that he knew that he could delay his death sentence by just appealing all the time, just appealing endlessly. And then some guy, I think he was some kind of a family member, he said, well, what he did was wrong to that woman, but what this judge did is also wrong. It's like, that's not how it works.
Protesters are pushing for one of the state's highest criminal court judges to resign. The group says Sharon Keller prevented the appeal of a man on death row from being filed. Fox 7's Arzo Dost was there when protesters filed that complaint just a few hours ago. Arzo.
And Mike, those complaints actually center around Michael Richard's execution. Protesters say Judge Keller refused to keep the court open past 5 to accept a last-minute appeal. Now they want her to step down.
Keller must resign. It's not justice, it's a lie.
Outside outside the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals.
Hey, Keller, you can't hide.
We charge you with homicide.
The chants are loud, the signs condemning.
Because this is an outrage to the justice system.
Each protester's here with a message for Judge Sharon Keller.
I have a letter here I'd like to deliver.
They say she refused an after-hours appeal for killer Michael Richard. He was convicted of murdering a Houston woman 2 decades ago. The group of about 30 started pouring in just before 5 Friday.
We also have a copy of a complaint that we're filing with the State Commission on Judicial Conduct.
Richard was executed September 25th.
And at 8:23, they pronounced him dead. And I, myself, and the family only blames one person, and that's Sharon Keller. And if it wasn't for Sharon Keller, he would still be here today.
His sister, Patricia Miller, came in from Houston to make her point.
As of November the 25th and no day later, I would like for her to resign from her spot as a judge.
Richard's appeal relates to the U.S. Supreme Court considering a Kentucky case on whether lethal injection is cruel and unusual punishment. Richard's attorney said executions in Texas should stop until the court rules. But on the night of the execution, defense attorneys claimed they were having computer problems and showed up to the court 20 minutes after it closed. Because they were late, Richard's request was turned down.
We think the attorneys did a well of a job. They did a bang-up job. But we don't think that this system here in Texas was willing to cooperate with them. We know what Michael did is wrong. But also, on the other hand, this system did not treat him fair either.
Unlike the day Richard was executed.
So we'd like to ask you to stay open an extra 20 minutes.
On this day, the court clerk's office stayed open past 5.
And it's not justice, it's alarm. Killer, Keller must resign. It's not.
It's like the complete ignoring, not ignoring, the rape of justice. That's what this is. It's the rape of justice. And it's like, your brother didn't give a shit about that woman. Raped her, killed her, didn't give a shit about the fact that her kids were going to come home to see their dead mother. Didn't care. How can people be so callous? How? It's because we are living in a spiritual proxy war. That's why. We are living in a spiritual proxy war. It's like NATO versus Russia. Russia has got its army. NATO has got its proxies, and its proxies, a lot of them, are Nazis. God has his proxies, us. The devil's got his proxies, these people, these monsters. And his proxies have no shame. They have no heart. They have no regret. They have no remorse about what they do. They don't care. They'll steal people's cars, destroy people's businesses, riot, kill, rape. They don't give a shit. Hack people to death with machetes, kidnap people to steal their organs, behead people, burn people alive. They don't give a damn. It's like, how can these Azeri soldiers cut this woman's breasts off and film her body and scoff and mock? How can they do that? Because they're the devil's armies. And that's all this life is. All this life is a war. It's what it is. It's a war. All of life is a war. It's a war with evil. It's a war with ourselves. It's a war with our flesh. It's just a war. It's constant warfare. That's all it is. And when you look at life for what it is, it's like, man, our lives can be comfortable momentarily. It can change like that. In a moment, it can change like that. Like one day, somebody could invade your house and rob all your shit and kill you. Like, you don't know. That's why I say life is depressing. And if there was no God, life would be completely meaningless. But because there is a God, because we're in a cosmic struggle between good and evil, the void of life, and yes, life feels like a void. The void of life is bittersweet. You know, have you ever walked on a beach late at night? The ocean looks like a gaping black hole. It looks like a gaping black realm of nothingness. That's what it looks like. Like a gaping black hole of nothingness. That's what life feels like. Because Evil is all around us. That's just the reality of it. But what gives us hope is the fact that we're in a proxy war. It's like NATO versus Russia. We're in a proxy war. That's what gives us hope. And it's the fact that evil exists because we're in a war between good and evil. And at the same time, good exists because we're in a war between good and evil. And we cannot really notice how dark things are unless we have a spark of light. And it's with that spark of light that we have hope. And life, as depressing and as morbid and as doomerish and dismal as it is, life is bittersweet. Anyway, you guys just heard some theology. God bless.
Скажи мені своє ім'я, відкрий свій зміст, віддай слова, я відключаю себе зовні, налаштовую на вічність, я дивлюсь у твої